Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our STEM in Action event. First, we want to introduce who we are. My name is Mahak Tiwari. I am the founder and president of Hope in STEM's Phi Sigma Alpha chapter here at Mount San Jacinto College.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm one of the co-vice presidents for Hope in STEM.
Hi, my name is Nopapata, and I'm the co-vice president along with Haley.
Hi, my name is Alexis Martinez. I'm an executive finance officer.
Hi, I'm Casey D. Guzman, and I'm a public relations officer.
You might ask, what is Hope in STEM? Well, we are a club and an honor society here at Mount San Jacinto College. We first chartered last semester in the fall of 2020, and we have been hosting many events, including guest speakers and projects like these since then. Today, we will be presenting our STEM in Action project. This is a project Hope in STEM students, officers, do every semester that can include almost anything we want that relates to STEM. This spring semester, we decided to do an informative project surrounding environmental science, specifically the consequences we face that impact the earth and humans. Please welcome our fellow officers. Our past and present actions have negatively impacted the environment, which comes with many consequences that affect the earth and humans. Our officers will inform everyone about these consequences and show you how going the Green Mile can help you make change not only for yourself and your community, but for the world. We have separated our research into two groups. Our first group will be sharing their research on how the consequences of our actions affect the earth, informing on climate change and some important actions we can take to make a difference. Our second group will be sharing their research on how the consequences of our actions affect humans, informing on pollution and some key changes we can make to help our communities and homes thrive. Our our first group, will be informing on climate change.
So our actions have greatly affected the environment. One of the ways we can see this is climate change. And while the effects of climate change continue to hurt the earth, the growing ignorance we see in the climate change debate does the same. So learning and understanding climate change and all of its effects is the first step to creating change. So we'll be talking about these main points. First, we would like to tell you all about climate change. Then we will show you how recycling is a major step in creating change for climate change and a way you can take action in your own home. And finally, we will be answering some questions on e-waste, how it affects the environment, and what we can do to help. So now that you understand the main points we'll be talking about, we will move on to clearing up any misconceptions we may have about climate change.
First, we would like to show you general climate change with the policy. We can expect increased frequency and intensity of heat waves, reduced snowpacks, reduced rainfalls, and increasing frequency and intensity of wildfires due to drier conditions. Increasing temperatures, with challenges already present as heat waves, crop failure, drought, and reduced snowpack, posing increasing threats and costs to public health. As heat waves become more frequent and intense due to climate change, California will be at greater risk of health impact. Melting snowpack. Snowpacks and streamfalls are projected to decline in California, reducing the reliability of surface waters of cities, farmers, and ecosystems. Reducing water's availability combined with increasing temperatures threatening crops and animal agriculture in California. The droughts. Climate change is linked to California's droughts by two mechanisms: rising temperatures and changing autom- automatic sphere patterns. Together, these mechanisms have contributed to temperatures contribute to severe and uncommon droughts in the state. For size, hot and dry weathers lead to 5 years of acute drought in California from 2011 through 2016, and even worsened by the climate change that cost the state over $3 billion in 2015 and 2016. Wildfires. The ingredients of the contribution to wildfires are heat, drought, and dead trees. All of these ingredients have increased the numbers of scale of wildfires in California. 14 of California's 20 worst wildfires have occurred in just the last 10 years. The Paris Agreement. What is it? The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. To achieve this long temperature goals, countries aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gases emissions as soon as possible to achieve a climate neutral world by mid-century. How does it work? The Paris Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasing ambition, climate actions carried out by countries. By 2020, countries submit their plans for climate action known as nationally determined contributions. The progress. With the Paris Agreement, countries establish an enhanced transparency framework. Under ETF, starting in 2024, countries will report transparency on actions taken and progress in climate change, adaptation measures, and support provided and received. Now we will talk about recycling.
Okay, so first I wanted to talk about how, we showed you climate change. Now we want to show you how recycling can help a little. So recycling is the process of collecting and processing materials that would normally be thrown away as trash and instead turns them into products. I'm sure many of us know what what recycling is. And we do the typical recycling of bottles and cans. Recycling is reducing waste, so in turn decreasing the generation of greenhouse gases. And it does this in 2 important ways, helping save energy in the processing of materials and reducing waste in landfills. So making new products from virgin materials, meaning natural resources that are extracted in their raw form, uses a lot of energy to collect and process those materials. So a lot more energy is used creating products from virgin materials than it is for recycled materials. So if we create products from recycled materials, we can reduce the amount of virgin materials needed and save more energy that is required to produce them. Less energy used and fewer fossil fuels burned equates to reduced emissions of greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change. So in the United States, next slide, please. In the United States, landfills are the 3rd largest emitters of methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas, so when it's present in the atmosphere, it impacts the Earth's temperature and climate. And according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, methane is 25 times more effective than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. So by recycling more of the trash we put into landfills, the amount of gases released from these landfills can be greatly reduced. Also, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and in these graphs, we can see MSW generation rates and MSW recycling and composting rates. MSW just means municipal solid waste, meaning the trash of everyday items that are thrown away. So we can see that without including composting, recycling alone rose from 9.6% of MSW in 1980 to 23.6% in 2018. So even though an increased number of tons were recycled in 2018 than ever seen before, the recycling rate actually decreased to the lowest level since 2006. So the question is, what can we do to help? Recycling is a group effort that we all need to make contributions toward if we truly wish to slow and stop climate change. And being aware of our waste is the first step. Like I said earlier, I'm sure many of us recycle the usual bottles and cans, but those items are still ending up in landfills. So I wanted to share some common items that you should put in your recycling bin. So that includes cardboard, paper, food boxes, mail, beverage cans, food cans, jars, jugs, plastic bottles, and caps. You should also check with your local recycling provider to see other items that you can put in your recycling bin, and you'll create a big difference. I also want to make you aware of things that you should never put in your recycling bin. Some of these things might seem a little random, but they're still important. So garden hoses, sewing needles, bowling balls, food or food soiled paper, propane tank cylinders, aerosol cans that aren't empty, electrical waste and batteries should not go in your recycling bin. And we'll talk more about that later. Syringes, needles, broken glass, and broken light bulbs should not go in the garbage either, and should be thrown away at household hazardous waste collection centers. For California, you can find these local collection sites at this website. We can put it in the chat as well. You just enter your zip code and those local sites will come up. So try to recycle everything that you can. And like I said earlier, learn exactly what is recyclable and be sure to recycle everything that is. I also wanted to share that Hope NSTEM is encouraging our student officers to recycle for profit, which means collecting cans and bottles and taking them to a recycling center. I also have that link for you to find a recycling center. So there's Go Green, Murrieta Recycling, Love Earth Recycling in Lake Elsinore, Cash for Cans Recycling in San Jacinto. So these are some that you can hopefully look up and find. Those are in our general area. But next slide, please. Composting. So composting is also a way we can take organic materials where it would normally break down in landfills like food into decomposing organic material that's a great source and rich in plant nutrients and beneficial to many organisms. So composting reduces greenhouse gases and even removes emissions from the atmosphere. So you can not only help the environment by reducing waste in landfills, but also use it for your lawn and garden. So I wanted to share a little bit of how to compost. So select your food scraps. At first, it might be a little hard to get used to. It was for me. In this picture, you can see some of the things that you should and shouldn't put in your compost. You should put in scraps like scraps from fruits and vegetables. You can also put in eggshells, yard clippings, coffee grounds, newspapers, and much more. You shouldn't put in things like meat, fish, dairy, oil, or bones. So choose a place to make your compost. There are many options. I have some pictures of some makeshift composts, a tub with poked holes in it, one made of chicken wire. The other one is one that the top photo is my compost actually that I built. You can also use old trash bins, wooden chests. If you live in an apartment, it might be a little different. Using the tub one you see there could be a good option, but there are other options like vermicomposting or bokashi composting. So if you're interested in those, I recommend you look up those because they're really interesting. Or I can give you some more information. So next, you will need to make your compost. So you need greens and browns in your mix. Greens are considered the food scraps. And these are adding nitrogen, which is needed for microbial growth. Browns are considered the newspapers, cardboard, dry leaves, pin needles, and shredded paper. So these are more carbon rich. For the mix, you'll need more browns than greens. So browns are there to soak up the greens, which are wet. Wait and aerate, so be patient. It takes time for decomposition, and if it's cold, it could take 6 months, but we're getting into summer, so it could be 2 months. turn and rotate your pile. I usually do this with a shovel about every 10 days. So that's how to compost and how it makes a huge difference. For some, it may seem like a small step, and for others, a huge step. But I hope I inspired you to make that change no matter how challenging you might think it is. But for someone who just started my own, I can tell you it's mostly fun and a good learning experience. So after telling you all about recycling and how to make a positive impact on climate change just from your home, we would like to show you another way the environment is affected by our actions, e-waste.
Hello everyone, I'm here to present some of the basic facts and figures for e-waste. So what is e-waste? Electrical and electronic waste, or e-waste, are the terms given to scraps of power technology that have been discarded at the end of their lifetime. They include any household or business products that have a battery or power supply, such as phones, monitors, lamps, thermostats, fans, and the bigger equipment, such as washing machines. Once these items are thrown away without the intention of reuse, they're recycled for valuable materials or inherited by a waste management organization for disposal. As more societies modernize, enhance living standards, and increase disposable income, the demand for these new electronics increases dramatically and turns into waste fairly quickly. During this pandemic, it was increasingly more noticeable how reliant we are to faster and better technology. We couldn't live without it. So as consumers, we generally prefer the best there is, with more features and compatibility over concerns about our footprint and our environments. So what is the life cycle of an electronic? Well, the life cycle of electronics starts from mining raw materials and extracting it from quarries. Precious minerals and materials are extracted from the earth in huge quarries and transported for production at an electronics manufacturing facility. In 2019, around 39 tons of raw materials were needed to meet the demands of electronics and electrical equipment around the world. Precious and critical metals such as aluminum, iron, and copper are mined to depletion eventually and lead to new quarries and sites opened for excavation. This process produces about 190 tons of carbon dioxide emissions, which enter the atmosphere and warm the climate of the Earth. In addition to this, precious water and land are removed to search for ore deposits. When materials reach the production stage, they are turned into new materials, assembled into commodities, and tested for safety. The production of electronics such as TVs, phones, and computers produces about another 2.9 tons of carbon dioxide, which is released into the atmosphere. Then they are distributed to stores for sale on the market. Once it enters the market, it attracts the attention of all consumers, like all of us, who buy it for our school and computer needs. After we discard our electronics, it turns into e-waste, which is collected by a waste management organization to be disposed of. Total global e-waste generated from discarded electronics is around 53.6 tons in 2019 alone. Of that pile, only about 17% of 17.4% of e-waste is formally documented and recycled, while the remaining 82.6% is found in other streams of waste or simply not found. Even if we were to recycle 100% of our e-waste in that year alone, we would still need around another 14 tons of virgin materials, which to meet the demands of electronics in our era. Which brings us back to the beginning, where we start at raw material extraction again. So now that we know that e-waste is the result of growing stream of technology necessary for daily life, but obsolete for long-term use. So what makes all of this harmful? When electronics are burned, they release toxic flame retardant chemicals such as polybromated diphenyl ethers and polybromated biphenyls. When improperly disposed or handled, these chemicals leak into the water and soil, of nearby communities affecting humans, animals, and plants alike. PBDEs do not bind strongly to the sediments and particle matter for contact, but they attach themselves to airborne matter, which can be easily ingested or inhaled. As tested by the National Toxicology Program, these chemicals were determined to cause cancer, development issues, DNA damage and changes to DNA expression, liver issues, and more in small children. PBBs are also considered to be probably carcinogenic to cause cancer by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. With additional testing on animals, they are known to lead to neurotoxicity, weight loss, skin disorders, liver kidney damage, and immune system disorders. Both of these dangerous chemicals can be passed down through breast milk onto new generations of children. Both of these, in addition to human health hazards, recycled plastics with PBD and PBB higher than 0.1% cannot be recycled for new products. Without a specialized facility, it is impossible to recycle these without suffering the effects of its direct effects. So how does this all affect the environment? Once this waste is left in the environment, metals, chemicals, and glass is spread into the soil, dust, and nearby water resources. As an example, the disposed CRT glass left in landfills affects the environment by leaking its lead contents. This inhibits plant and animal growth, as well as causes sickness in humans over time. Furthermore, metals such as mercury found in flat panels cause serious harm to the nervous system and lifelong damage. Furthermore, halogens such as chlorofluorocarbons and hydrochlorofluorocarbons release greenhouse gases from older refrigerants and insulating foam. These molecules react with ozone layers in the environment. Ozone molecules generating molecular oxygen that thins the stratospheric ozone layer. Over time, UV rays from the sun pass down onto the earth and warms the climate and leads to permanent environmental damage. Similarly, air conditioning systems outside of homes also release greenhouse gases that leak into the atmosphere as well. Overall, 98 tons of carbon dioxide may have been released from the poor management of these air conditioning systems and refrigeration systems. The older systems we throw away contribute to global warming for years after they become useless to us. This leads us back to the question, what can we do? With Mahak.
Now, let's talk about some of the things we can do with our used electronics. So you might be asking yourself, I've heard all of this about e-waste. What can I do with my used electronics? As individuals, we can always look for ways to change our habits and make small changes before we tackle the bigger problems on our planet. One small change you can make for yourself is reducing how much electronics you use over your lifetime. Try your best to take care of the equipment you have before you throw it away. Try to extend its lifetime by being more careful of where you place your phone and how much you use it. And try not to overcharge the batteries inside your phone or computer when you plug it into your power outlets. Otherwise, you will find yourself in need of more tech. You can also donate your used electronics or buy reused ones when you find yourself in need of another device. Start donating or recycling electronics to local retailers in your area. Best Buy and Staples are two popular options that both offer in-store, event, and online recycling options. These resources will be available in the chat. You can also donate working electronics to local charities, K through 12, and university recycling programs, municipal recycling events, or nonprofits with this website, 1-800-GotJunk.com. That resource will also be available in the chat. Please keep in mind that some of these programs have certain assigned days and places for people to drop off their e-waste. If you're having trouble Finding a center near you. Use these websites to find the nearest proper waste organization that can take in your batteries, old electrical equipment, and electronics, rechargeable rechargeable battery and cell phone drop-off locator. You can find any drop-off location that allows you to recycle used rechargeable batteries from the Cal2 Recycle website. If you're unsure, if if you're unsure about throwing away your electrical items, please do call 1-800-CLEANUP. That is 1-800-253-2687 to find the nearest recycling center. One final way to help is to reevaluate your needs. Before every purchase, ask yourself if you truly need this item for your life. If you absolutely need it for work or school, you can always research for eco-friendly certified products with the electronic product environmental assessment tool. These eco-friendly labels are given to products that meet strict environmental criteria such as safe material selection, supply chain, greenhouse gas emissions reduction, designed for circularity and product longevity, energy conservation, and end-of-life management. It is the tool recommended by the Environmental Protection Agency and used all around the world by purchasers and sellers, so you can see what products you should buy while browsing online. Please be sure to promote these recycling tips with your friends and family so you can truly do the world a service. Now that you have learned more about e-waste and the actions you can take, we would like to show you how pollution affects human lives.
From political, economic, and social issues, there are many factors that play into our climate crisis. With climate change comes many consequences, including health issues. Contaminated food intake can cause short-term illnesses like diarrhea, nausea, fever. Pollution can also cause skin and eye irritation. Long-term effects include birth defects, chronic illnesses, and various organ systems, and also an increased risk of cancer. The baby in the picture shows what can happen if a mother is exposed to toxins or when it experiences malnutrition. This is called microcephaly, where the head is significantly smaller due to abnormal brain development. Those who do, those who are exposed to more pollution are more likely to not have access to healthcare or maybe unaware and maybe avoid getting treated. With underlying health issues, whole communities may be more susceptible to disease and illnesses. We will be talking about these main points, types of pollution, its origins and effects, how it impacts communities and individuals, and what you can do to prevent community pollution. Next slide. Okay, so air pollution is the presence of unnecessary air particles that can cause harm to the environment and our health. It ranges from harmful chemicals to dust and debris. Particles smaller than 2.5 micromolecules should not be inhaled, since these particles are one of the main causes of respiratory health problems regarding air pollution, since it causes irritation in the lungs and damages bronchioles. Air pollution affects young children more than adults, and at least 1 million people die in India every year due to water pollution, and another 50,000 to 100,000 die because of air pollution. So pollutants emitted from industrial complexes enter the human body through the respiratory system or the skin and can cause allergic reactions, respiratory problems, acute and chronic diseases such as asthma and lung dysfunctions. Tiny particles that bypass your respiratory barriers cause lung inflammation. Inflammation is like an immune response to fight back foreign particles. And since they were able to bypass these barriers, these harmful and toxic particles go deep in the lungs and start to accumulate in the bloodstream and starts to affect the cardiovascular system. Bronchi and bronchioles are important because they carry out our gas exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen, and also carry our cardiovascular system carries our blood throughout our body system. So since there are foreign particles in our blood, it also reacts by having an inflamed reaction. And this constriction is known as high blood pressure. Next slide. So chemical pollution is the release of harmful or unnecessary amounts of chemicals released into the environment. They can cause birth defects. The water itself can become unfit for domestic, agricultural, and industrial use. Along with health effects for humans, chemical pollution can also upset ecosystems and bodies of water. It causes eutrophication, where it's like a richness of nutrients in a body of water that can cause algae blooms, and it's harmful because of the decomposition of oxygen in the water, causing surrounding fish and other creatures and plants to die. According to the WHO, about 750,000 people are poisoned by pesticides and fertilizer every year, resulting in about 14,000 deaths. Fertilizers and pesticides find their way into the food chain and are responsible for a variety of health hazards. So water pollution is a byproduct of chemical pollution. It ranges from biological pathogens to hazardous chemicals to large objects. The effects of contaminated water can lead to chemical poisoning and biological pathogens, causing individuals to experience illnesses. The river Ganga in India was known as one of the purest water sources. During the past 2 to 3 decades, a large number of industrial complexes have been established along the route from the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal and discharging their waste to the river. More than 80 big industries are located near the river, and the river Ganga passes through 35 big cities in India, supporting 50 million people. Okay, so these are some forms of pollution that you might not consider in your everyday life. So thermal pollution is the excessive heat that is released into the atmosphere. It's different from solar energy because thermal pollution is from man-made and natural stuff. Some effects of thermal pollution can trigger malnutrition and can cause enzymes to break down. Enzymes are crucial to carrying out important functions such as building muscle, destroying toxins, and breaking down food particles during digestion. Because so many creatures are sensitive to this type of heat temperature change, many fish die in rivers, lakes, and ocean due to overheating. Noise pollution is exposure to excess noise. It can range from traffic to industrial noise to community events like concerts that are bothersome to surrounding neighborhoods. The WHO defines noise pollution as anything above 65 decibels, but becomes harmful when it goes over 75 decibels. Some physical effects with long exposure to unnecessary noises includes anxiety, stress, irritability, high blood pressure, insomnia, and hearing loss. A 24-month study of children living near an airport in Germany found that children had long-term memory loss and reading impairment. Living around loud noise can affect a child's developing brain. Their stress hormones are boosted by constant noise, which in turn affects their psychological well-being. There are many policies that regulate pollution management and can reduce the health effects of those in our communities.
Okay, so some actions to reduce air pollution. Conserve energy at home, at work, and everywhere. Look for the Energy Star label when buying home or office equipment. Carpool, use public transportation, bike, or walk whenever possible. Consider purchasing portable gas line containers labeled spill-proof when available. Reduce pollution. Choose a cleaner commute, share a ride to work, or use public transportation. Combine earnings and reduce trips, walk to errands when possible. Reduce the number of trips you take in your car, reduce or eliminate fireplace or wood stove use. Avoid burning leaves, trash, or other materials, and avoid using gas-powered lawn and garden equipment. Now we will talk about communities and their policies.
Okay, so factors ranging from lack of regulation, social issues, and high amounts of unnecessary consumerism contribute to the growing issue of environmental pollutions and health problems. As waste from multiple industries accumulate in these areas, the pollution in the surrounding area also increases. Chemicals from water pollution and air particles from air pollution affect the health of those who live in these areas. Um, Air pollution affects young children more than adults, according to the US agency. Air pollution is responsible for about 50 million cases of chronic coughing in children below 14 years of age all over the world per year. So policies regarding unregulated pollution, as waste from multiple industries accumulate in these areas, the pollution in the surrounding area like also increases. Um, most of the world's population, most of the world's pollution is released through large corporations, and the ones who suffer the most are those who live in the production sites, dump sites, and even those directly working in the facilities. So regulation is really needed to control pollution, especially since big industries sometimes do not want to follow health and environmental regulations. Um, Sanitation is also another issue where water filtration, sewage management, and proper plumbing are not well maintained. This is important to keep cities clean. Outbreaks regarding lack of sanitation have become a problem. For example, like cholera outbreaks in London during like the 1800s. They had a lot of the people who got sick had one water source that was contaminated with biological pathogens. Um, urban urban planning is also another issue where lack of urban planning leads to people not having an adequate living standard and also increases risk of illnesses. Um, Social issues that we might not consider are like wealth gaps. Those who are wealthy have the opportunity to move out of heavily polluted areas since they can commute to work or they can find better jobs. Those who live close to the facilities are often working there, and they they what is it? They don't have to commute as much because they live closer to their working facility. Access to education. A lot of people in poor areas lack proper education and knowledge of the harm that they're doing to the environment. Some economic issues include cheap labor and exploitation. Industries like mining, fishing, clothing, and other industries that rely on cheap labor prioritize making a quick profit over the concerns of the environment and those who are being exploited. Although your products are cheap, the people who pay the real price are the people working in these industries.
So, like Casey was just saying, climate change and pollution are not only problems of the environment, but problems of human rights and social justice. Low-income communities are less responsible for pollution and climate change, yet suffer the most consequences. Many groups and people often treat environmental issues and racial injustice as separate. However, in truth, environmental injustices we see stem from systemic racism. Some movement to make change is seen by groups across the United States, like WeAct, New York City's first environmental justice organization, who have provided awareness to the disparities we see in pollution in communities and helped bring city, state, and federal policies to the forefront. We can see in New York the Safe School Water Act, which requires the testing and correction of lead in all New York schools. There's also New York's Environmental Justice Study Bill and Environmental Justice Policy Bill, which both bring information to New Yorkers, helping them be able to identify and address environmental injustices. Unfortunately, the United States has hardly solved issues of environmental injustices, especially in our communities. To bridge this gap, some of the things we need to focus on include allowing communities to speak for themselves and actually be heard. We need to be informed and understanding of these environmental injustices if we wish to create any change. More results and data are needed to create equitable policies, and attention on these specific issues are needed to have a better understanding and develop those policies. While the data needs to be improved and actually collected, we need to make progress in healing our communities and continuing to move for change. Going forward, we need to focus on fighting for development on these environmental injustices, um, and the policies and solutions can no longer ignore the systemic racism that infects our community's environmental health. So now that we have shown you the many ways our communities are affected by pollution and how we can advocate for change, we would like to tell you how pollution can affect you in your own home. So pollution in the home is not something a lot of us think about, but it affects all of us. So the air quality in buildings and our homes directly relates to people's comfort as well as health. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Americans spend about an average of 90% of their time indoors, where concentrations are often 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor concentrations. Pollutants are 2 to 5 times higher in indoor. So by learning and understanding indoor pollutants, we can reduce our risk to these health concerns, and these health concerns can have immediate or long-term effects. Immediate effects can show up shortly after a single or repeated exposure to a pollutant. These immediate effects can include irritation of the nose, throat, and eyes, but are usually short and treatable. Immediate reaction to these indoor pollutants depends on an individual's sensitivity, age, and pre-existing medical conditions. Long-term effects can show up after years of exposure or after long periods of exposure. Effects can include some respiratory diseases, cancer, and heart diseases, all of which can be debilitating or fatal. So more research is needed to understand these indoor pollutants and concentrations or periods of exposure needed to cause some health issues. Improving the air quality of our homes is necessary even if symptoms are not noticeable. But before we move to improve our homes, we need to know where pollution actually comes from. So pollution in the home can come from many different sources, including fuel burning appliances or combustion sources like fireplaces and tobacco products, certain building materials like new flooring, carpet, asbestos containing insulin, other natural resources like mold or pet dander, and products used for cleaning, personal care, or maintenance, which put chemicals and even volatile organic compounds into the air. So recognizing indoor air pollutants and these health consequences can help us prepare for the possible health issues. However, making changes to reduce those health consequences of indoor air pollution and minimizing our risk to further exposure is also crucial. So while in developed countries like the United States have wooden framework, concrete bases, flooring of polished wood, electricity used for cooking, air conditioning, and improved hygiene and cleaning agents, in developing countries and rural areas, stones, bricks, and cement are used for houses, and wood and charcoal and other biomass are used for cooking, lighting, and heating, all of which are causes for pollution indoors. So while a need for studies to develop intervention and policies in developing countries is needed, we also need to have a standard way to monitor the exposure. It's also necessary that we understand the relationship between poverty and the dependence on things like the use of biomass for fuel. in turn seeing the importance of socioeconomic development, which should be at the center of our efforts to establish healthier indoor environments. So advocating for others and their home health is a huge way we can make a difference, but we can also make a difference in indoor pollution in your own home. So to reduce air pollution in your own home, here are some tips. So open windows can help ventilation exchange, have a good exchange between indoor and outdoor air. An air purifier can help remove impurities and allergens from your home and can be especially helpful to those who suffer from asthma. Exhaust fans can help remove fumes that are released from cooking into the air. If you have wood burning or fuel burning fireplaces, try not to use them. Steer clear of using scented candles and incense or air fresheners. So cleaning surfaces, vacuuming is a very important way to remove dust and dander. Paint, cleaning supplies, personal care products, and detergents all release chemicals into our environment, like I said earlier. So follow the instructions on the label and store them away from living areas. Change filters of cooling and heating systems, especially when there's more pollen or smoke in the air. Bathe your pets, which is not only important for them, but also to reduce allergy-causing dander that they release in your home. Use a doormat, wipe your shoes or take your shoes off to reduce pollutants carried into your home. So those are some ways you can reduce pollution in your home that many of us may have not known.
So I hope we have given you a good understanding of the consequences of our actions and how they have greatly impacted the earth and humans. So today we've showed you a general overview of climate change, how recycling is a way you can create big change just in your own home, e-waste, a general overview of pollution, and that pollution disproportionately affects communities and environmental injustice, which is something that we need to advocate for. And finally, that pollution in the home affects us all, but there are many ways we can ensure our safety. Climate change and pollution are ever growing and pressing issues across the world. By learning and understanding more about climate change, we can clear up misconceptions and advocate for change. We have shown you several policies and actions you can take to make change for the betterment of our planet and all of the people on it. Now we will move on to a Q&A where you can ask our officers any questions. You can either unmute your mic to ask or type in the chat.
Yes, I did have a question in relation to actually another study from the University of Newcastle. I'm wondering if familiarity with it. It's how much microplastics are we consuming in the water, because plastics is one of the major polluting in a lot of our drinking water today. And I was wondering if there's an action way to be able to clean up rivers or a way to clean up oceans currently as it stands.
Unfortunately, I did not research into microplastics. I know it's been a huge thing in the news recently, and I've seen exactly what you're saying. So I don't know any action ways. I'll have to research more into that. But thank you for the question and giving me more information to research about.
Do you mind if I post the study in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Tawny, if you're talking, I can hardly hear you. It's okay.
Tawny, you there?
No, it sounds like you're like really far away from your mic.
Okay, yeah, I'm typing my question.
Actually, I think Marcy had a question in the chat earlier. If technology is so unhealthy, is there a more biological, natural approach that is being researched, or do we just view technology as a necessary evil? That's a good question. I believe we talked about some technology that's more, correct me if I'm wrong, Adolfo and Mahak. It was us. Do you guys can you guys answer that question better than me?
Sure. How about Adolfo? You take this one.
Sure. So, researchers are always studying ways to reduce the environmental impact of our technology, but we will have to research that more in more specificity. But it's a good question. As of right now, we sort of see technology as a necessary evil on our planet, but hopefully in the future we can change that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I believe we have a question from Tani in the chat. Can I add my paper coffee filters in with my composting?
I believe if your filters are not bleached or like something like that, you can put them in. I would have to look into it more, but I put my coffee filters in. I can't remember which ones I have, but it depends on the ones that you have. As long as they're not bleached, I believe they're good. Yeah. I wanted to, I'll put the slides in the chat if anyone wants them, so you can see our sources as well as get those links if you didn't get them from the chat already. I'll get that for you guys. Oh, okay, you got it. Cool. You're quick on it.
If you want to take a look at our presentation in more detail or review our sources that we used, you can always check out the PDF in the chat to look them over.
And if you would like to re-watch this presentation for some of those that came late, this presentation will be up on our Hope and STEM YouTube channel.
So yeah, if no one has any more questions, I thank you everyone for coming today and listening to our presentation. I believe we put our contact information in the chat. If not, I will do that right now. If you're interested in Hope and STEM and joining next semester, and we're having officer elections next semester as well, and there's a lot of positions open that I hope you guys will join us. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
Thank you. You guys did great.